Hello. So little did you know we were not going to show that video, but I needed a little bit more time to mentally prepare to use this. Okay, cool. There you go. We're going to see how it works. So I'm Erin Knight from Mozilla, and I'm joined here with Beth Swanson from the City of Chicago and Nicole Pinkard from DePaul and Digital Youth Network. So we're here to kind of build on all of the great stuff you just heard from Connie and David and Mark to talk about a real use case, a real badge system that we built, and more importantly, a network level badge system that connected a bunch of organizations and learners. And I need to see my slides. So let's see how this is going to work. Did you see that? I just did it. One try. So, no worries. I get a badge. Yeah. So we did this little thing last summer called Chicago Summer of Learning. And it was about this time a year ago. It was actually December of 2012 that I got an email from Connie that she had forwarded from, I think, Beth, that was like, hey, you know, what do you think about trying to do badging across the entire city of Chicago by the summer?
It was a simple request.
It was a totally simple request. And Connie forwarded it to me and was like, you know, WTF, should we do this? But it was a transformational moment, both in the opportunity to really kind of take badging to the next level, but also just in the way we thought about badges. And so up until then, we've been working with individual organizations, really thinking about you know, kind of what badges for very specific types of learning look like, and talking a lot about what Connie talked about how you connect things, but not really in a position to do that in a big way. It was really about like, how do we refine what badges mean for individual experiences. And so all of a sudden, when we started thinking about it or had this opportunity at a city level, you know, it really did kind of take things to multiple higher levels. Oh, damn. There we go. So we started right away saying, okay, you know, this is kind of turning things on its head a little bit. Like, let's stop here. Let's take a little time. You know, we had 4 months or whatever to build it. To think about what this means for badging, what this means for the city, what the goals are, what we're really trying to accomplish. And what became clear, and Carla Casilli, you might have heard her say the word system a few thousand times, but is that when we're talking about something at the city level or this network level, we're really talking about a system. And so, you know, whoa. Damn it! Thank you. I think I actually have to go back one. Anyway, so it, you know, we're here to talk about badges, obviously, and badges was a top level part of that initial conversation, but it was way more than badges that we were talking about. Badges were actually a very, very small piece of it, and in fact, the kind of last piece of what we were talking about. So we needed to coordinate across schools, across local organizations, leverage existing infrastructure and fill the gaps where there wasn't, you know, leverage across the city, leverage across content providers. So there was a lot that went into just building the foundation of even beginning to think about being able to layer badges on top of it. And then when you get to the actual, now I'm totally intimidated, to the actual badges themselves, again, when you think about a badge system, the badges, so I have this really nice slide that you can't see, but the badges are, you know, one small piece, but it's the learning, it's the assessment, it's the pathways, it's the experience. So there's a lot that goes into this thinking. And so I say all of that because, again, to kind of underline what you've heard from the other talks is that we're here to talk about badges, but we're really here to talk about transforming learning and about connecting learning and opportunities for folks. So the kind of 4 kind of goals that we went in, and I don't even know if this is the first one. Can you make sure that this is the first one? Okay, maybe back up one more. Yeah, so you know, when we're thinking about badging in general, but certainly at the kind of network or city level, there's lots of different affordances. So the first one that we really were thinking about when we thought about this badge system was that that the badges could really be about capturing and presenting the learning that's already occurring in the city. So you'll hear Nicole and Beth talk about the fact that we didn't invent new content, well, a little bit, but not, most of this was just about the learning experiences that were already happening across cultural institutions, across after-school programs, all across the city of Chicago already. It was really about highlighting it, capturing it, and then being able to communicate it. Also, it's not just about capturing the learning that's already happened, but it's also about motivating future learning to happen. Help youth or learners find ways to go deeper into their learning, to go broader, to find those pathways and to be motivated. And then the whole connection piece, right? So it's not just about connecting the learner to more, but it's also about connecting the organizations. And so, you know, Chicago was really able to build this growing and ongoing cohort of organizations that had similar goals and focus around how to kind of support the youth in the city. So again, those were the sort of kind of more generalized thinking that that we sort of, you know, kind of stopped and huddled around when we had this opportunity. And I'm going to hand it over to Beth to really dig into the sort of specific situation in Chicago that kind of led to what we ended up with.
Thanks. I'm afraid to use that, so if you want to keep going. You can tell I'm the government employee who brought paper for my part of this, just in case. But anyway, you know, I wanted to back up just really briefly and say, you know, just explain context for my role in the city as well. So we have major institutions running education and youth programs throughout the city of Chicago, but I'm at the mayor's office and sort of overseeing his policy for the entire continuum of education in Chicago. So really birth through all the K-12 system, you know, early childhood, K-12, city colleges, and into workforce and career. And so his vision really came, you know, it was very global, and he wants to support children and youth throughout Chicago, throughout that entire continuum. And part of my charge is to really just start thinking about how to break down silos between all of those bureaucratic institutions and think about things differently and connecting those institutions. And so this conversation around badging actually emerged after a fall that was, there was a fairly large and public debate around our Chicago public school system and some of the changes we wanted to bring to that. And a lot of it revolved around learning time. And so he was very, very passionate about adding more learning time to children, to the 400,000 kids experience in Chicago. We had the shortest school day and year in the country. And you know, he just felt like that was an issue of equity, and our kids weren't on the right footing with the rest of the nation, let alone globe. So we had sort of a debate about how to lengthen time of learning in our very traditional structures. And we got through that, and you know, and we do have now a longer day and a longer year after a pretty public fight. But the good thing that emerged from that was actually a very different dialogue about, you know, what are we doing as a city? Why are we thinking in these sort of traditional structures and having the same old, you know, arguments and fights around it? And could we be thinking about this entirely differently? And in those conversations, we had been convening the parks, the libraries, our cultural institutions, major nonprofit partners, knowing that they're all also teaching and supporting our children throughout their after-school time, their summer programming, winter and spring breaks. And so that's where the call in the email sort of to Connie said, I said, wait a minute, I think we could think about this really differently. It's not necessarily adding time or more opportunity. There's a ton of that happening in our Chicago in really robust ways. But how can we strategically link it all together, and how can we really push the city to think about learning differently? And that's when the email about, what about badges, came. And thank God, I've known Connie for over a decade, and we've worked on education in different ways. And she was crazy enough to think about it with us and wrangle the group that's already spoken to help us do it. So really, we went into it. I don't know what slide this is. sort of our goals about this continuum of pre-K, you know, again, the whole continuum. I was admittedly one of the people that really pushed on the participation badges. That also came from knowing that this is a new concept to a lot of folks, and including parents, and I'm also a parent of three kids in the system. And even talking to my own friends and colleagues, the badging was new, they didn't get it. And to me also, participation also introduced it in a way that got people just in the door, and then we could get them much further down the path, as Connie eloquently described. But that was one of the big ones. Again, themes of over Mayor Emanuel's entire administration are, you know, data-driven and more strategic and innovative, transparency, accountability, and I feel like badges really touch a lot of the major themes, not only in education, but a lot of the different subjects that we're working on. To give you an idea, I was just going to go to the next one, if you can. We focused on STEAM. Nicole's going to talk a little bit more about that, but the STEAM theme of trying to define these pathways and get people to get their hands around it a little more. And what we did is we started convening folks from all over the city, again, all the major public institutions, nonprofits, cultural institutions, et cetera. We ended up having over 100 organizations involved, over 230,000 opportunities for students to participate over the summer. To Chicago, that's a pilot or an experiment, but when you work for Mayor Emanuel, it's just a pilot. He wants every student, you know, to have this, and not only in our public schools, but every child in Chicago, really. So 100,000 badges were actually earned. We had about 30,000 active earners of these badges. And you know, we have not only online but on ground, and you saw the Nature Museum video of what kids are doing all summer and their learning and how it's being captured. And now we've gotten a tremendous amount of data. And so that's what's exciting also to us, is to think about, we finally have a view on all of those things. And again, I've worked in the education systems in Chicago for 15 years now, and there's been an ongoing debate of how to get all that data to connect. And so we know we have Chicago Public Schools with their you know, database of all the student information system. We've got the parks, the libraries, just our own city agencies simply not able to connect data like we'd like to around children and how we're doing as a city supporting those kids throughout that continuum that I talked about earlier. And this is actually going to provide us just a great deal of knowledge of not only what students are doing, what pathways are they interested in. We think about sharing it now. We're in good conversations with Chicago Public Schools about how that can instruct teachers and support teachers and how they're working with students and working with students differently. It's giving insight to parents about what's exciting to their learners at home. And we're just scratching the surface on all of that. So last year it felt like a big put one big toe in the water and see where we can take this. And now working with Nicole and DePaul and others, it's just to really mine through that and understand where we are and how can we really accelerate and enhance everything we're doing for students in Chicago. And so I think, Nicole, you're going to go more deeply into sort of
yes, happened. So I will say Mozilla and the city and MacArthur started in December. I think we got called in February or March. And I've gotten enough of those phone calls or emails from Connie to actually know that it's on the possibility with, I think, constraints, time constraints bring creativity. And so the more the constraints, the more you have to think outside the box to make it happen. And so the things I want to focus on, and some of this is coming off of listening to the great conversations we just had. Of course, there's a technical infrastructure that needed to be in place, but I think it's really important the combination of who's up here, because it really is about the people, infrastructure, the relationships, and what needed to be put in place such that we can build on top of the plumbing that Mozilla had in place. And I think that's really important to talk about. So there was because of STEAM, the focus on STEAM, the conversation started around, well, we know there's all these learning experiences in Chicago that if we use STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, we added the arts and math, that we probably can code, we can categorize every learning experience that's here, and then provide a way to have some relevancy back into the school system. But also, if we go back to Connie's equity slide, we also knew that, yes, there are a lot of programs that are in place, but we know a lot of kids aren't in the programs. A lot of parents don't have the money, and actually there aren't enough slots for kids. So in addition to saying let's work with the 100 organizations, I think the city put out a call, and I think within like a week or two, we had 100 organizations willing to come to a meeting to understand about badges. We also said, in connection to the system, we have to think about coming up with a set of self-paced online activities that kids can do on their own, either online or just do on their own, and then find a way to connect them to places where they can come and connect the badge, because we wanted to make sure that any kid could actually connect. We also thought about how to make it a game-like system. I think if you can go to the next slide. Where there's multiple ways. We wanted not just let me earn one badge, but really how can one opportunity unlock the next opportunity and unlock the other? So I'm gonna try to explain what's here. I'm curious, can you just click forward? I wanna see if the new slides got put in or not. Okay, no, okay, so go back. So I'll talk through it this way. So initially, level one of the game, if you think about it that way, was can you earn a badge from the programs that your parents had already signed you up to? Or can you go online and find those activities you just want to get your toe wet with, and let me spend 45 minutes, 2 hours, and engage in something. But then hopefully that unlocks an interest in some other areas, something you want to go deeper in. Or you do enough of them in a way that you say, hey, I've done 3 activities that are all science related. Maybe I do have an interest in science. Or I've done 3 that are art. So by sort of looking at the metadata, you can actually sort of push back to the kid and the parent and say, here's where some of your interests align, and here's some recommendations and opportunities for you. And so that took us through the 3rd level, at the bottom, where we had these pathways where we decided, partly because of time, the constraint of time, we could not create all these learning opportunities. So we had to say, let's curate. Let's go look over what's going on. There's all this work that's going there. So we are not going to create. We're only going to create a couple, and I think the Hive led the creation of a couple of face-to-face, or 6 or 7 face-to-face opportunities in the city. But we said, let's look at and talk to all of our partners around the country, and we can come up with at least 30, 40 different learning pathways that kids can engage in online. So we worked with MIT that did App Inventor. We worked with Indiana University that came up with 5 making ones. We worked with CodeHS for coding. So we had these 30 different pathways that kids, once they found their interests online and said, hey, I have an interest in programming, so maybe I will go for this programming badge, that they then began to work to engage in, and we used a social network platform that sort of allowed them to connect with each other. And one of the interesting things that came out of this is really looking at how this is all fluid and connected. So a kid might earn 2 badges, from an organization, but then you might see, you see a kid that's online that's earning 7 and 8 different of these pathway badges and working with them, back to back to back. So it really, I think we just sort of got our foot wet in some sense of saying what's possible, and now how do we think about extending this beyond just, you can go to the next one, beyond the beyond the summer. And this is really important. One of our goals and challenges is to make sure that kids, the equity issue is front and center to me. And Connie, I was about to stand up and clap when you were talking about it, because if we want to have badges as triggers for opportunities for, is this too close? Okay. Opportunities to unlock job opportunities and career, then that means everyone in Chicago has to have access to those. Okay, everyone in Chicago has to have access to those opportunities wherever they live. So this sort of this representation of where all the badge opportunities were in the city sort of lets us know we did some good, we did a lot of good, but that we did have opportunities available all over the city. And if we were to, if we had the map to say where were all those opportunities from the online, you have a whole, globe representation of that. And so the question is, okay, so we got through the summer, right? You know, on August 16th, we had this great event where kids from all over came to the Museum of Science and Industry and showed their stuff, what they have done, and other kids was like, hey, I didn't know you can, they were playing each other's video games, and the girls were showing their stuff that they had made, their shirts. So it was just such excitement, and it was a Hive maker party, pop maker party, right? I was going to say pop-up Hive maker party, and it was just the most engaging place where I think we all felt good. But then August 17th came, and then the question is, well, do we have to wait until next year to do this? So the Chicago City of Learning became...
Yeah. So, yeah, more, bigger, better, faster in Chicago. So as soon as the summer was over, we said, okay, we're doing it year-round. This is what we're going to do. But we thought about, again, you know, trying to expand this to out-of-school time programming, the winter and spring breaks, and just capturing all this learning. We also had really this snowball that has gotten huge and really rolling in the city, and those connections among all the institutions were just taking on life of their own. So, you know, sitting in some of those meetings and hearing the various institutions outside of all the city agencies that are focusing on, you know, certain pathways in science, et cetera, but now collaborating, sharing curriculum, you know, actually changing curriculum. So if a student then came to all of their programs sort of, you know, sequenced throughout the year, they would build to a certain pathway. I mean, this was sort of taking on like, we sort of pushed that first domino, and I feel like it was just moving. So the idea is really to start to get this to be an entire city of learning and capture all of this learning that sometimes is invisible, you know, to inform not only our students, our parents, our teachers, but our systems of how we can better support and serve our students in the city. And I think we're, you know, well on our way.
And to add to that, I mean, and so also this is, I'm going to put a plug in for needing, as we talk about curation, the need to curate all the different learning experiences that everyone is creating out here so we can make them available, not just to the youth of Chicago, but are we going to talk about the cities of learning?
Later.
Okay, to make them available to others that will be talked about later on.
So I'll close by just saying that I think we all feel that this, you know, toe dipping, this small pilot, if you will, you know, was generally a pretty big success, and that we really feel there's you know, a there, that there's something to keep exploring. And so in the city of Chicago, it's moving towards, you know, a city of learning. One of the most exciting things about this was that, as Connie talked about with connected learning and badges as the connectors, when we think about it in a city context, we're kind of working within this, you know, kind of mini connected learning ecosystem, sort of almost out of the box, where we have these connections to peer groups and interests, the parents and the schools kind of all at the table from the beginning. And so, you know, it's just a really, really exciting way to both explore that and push that, that kind of philosophy of learning, that transformed culture of learning, as well as provide real value to learners right away. So just despite what else is happening with the badging movement kind of outside of it, those badges meant something to those youth right away, and will continue to. So it's a really exciting thing that that we did, and that we will continue to do. And you'll hear some more announcements over the next couple of days that Nicole just totally gave away, you know, about other cities that are thinking about this too. So thank you.
You didn't hear that.